Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the safety of buying real estate abroad. I know this topic concerns a lot of people because I talk to many, have many clients, and this question comes up almost all the time. Let's break it down into small details today. The main thing that worries most people is, of course, how am I going to buy? How will I transfer money abroad? These are different laws, a different country, a different mentality. And at the same time, many people don't realize that in fact it can actually be much safer here in many respects than in their home country, for example, in Russia. When it comes to safety, for some reason, many people think about fraud, right? That is, they think that if they transfer money to someone somewhere, they'll get scammed, their money will be taken, and so on. In reality, I want you to know, using Georgia as an example, I want to tell you there is practically no fraud here at all, almost none whatsoever. Well, at least I haven't encountered it among acquaintances, colleagues, and I interact with a lot of people here and so on. So basically this just doesn't exist here. Running into any kind of scam, especially related to real estate, like you transfer money and it gets taken from you or something like that, is, I don't know, probably 0.01% out of 100. But what people actually lose money on is investing in projects that don't increase in value, that they can't get out of, and that they eventually have to sell at a loss. That's where people really lose money. And this is where the real danger lies, which for some reason most people simply don't see at all or refuse to see, and so on, right? Well, it's clear why developers create such conditions that make people really want to get into the project, right? There are super attractive prices, discounts, installment plans, and all that. People think, well, I won't lose all my money. After all, I invested it. No one is going to take it away from me. Yes, no one will take it away from you. But the question is, will you be able to get it back? Will you be able to sell this property later, exit the project, and so on? These are the main questions that unfortunately most people only understand after they've already invested their money. The biggest mistake is when people enter a project, especially a new development, and don't look at the difference between the market price and the price at which they're buying in. That is, people very often invest in overvalued projects that shouldn't cost as much as they're paying for them, right? And this is, well, a pure and simple mistake, isn't it? It's very important to look specifically at the price difference between the secondary market and the price at which you're buying in. Why is this critically important? Because that delta you get, that very gap, that's where you can actually make money. And in most cases, well, let me give you an example. So for instance, let's take a comfort class property. The developer starts building at $1,700 per square meter. That's the final price with finishing, right? So at the start of sales, they're selling at $1,700. But the final price, for example, at which similar resale properties are sold here, absolutely identical, no worse in quality in similar residential complexes and so on, is say $1,800. And the difference between the resale market price and the initial price is only $100. Ideally, if, for example, your property is completed and everything is fine, those $100 will just go to the realtor for selling your apartment per square meter. But most people don't think about that. Why? Because they go to the developer. The developer says, see, here's our price growth chart. Right now we're selling to you at $1,700, but by the end we'll be selling at $2,700 or even $3,000. And the person thinks, damn, I'll make that profit margin. Because why? The developer is showing me $1,000 per square meter. But in reality, no. Most developers sell at higher prices than the secondary market only because of heavy investments in marketing and because a lot of realtors work with them, pushing and hyping up the whole story. And those people who end up buying the finished product when it's already built often pay more than the secondary market price. You won't have the opportunity to sell your apartment like that. So if you bought from a developer, you have to look at the price of the secondary market, at what price you can actually sell this property. And the next very important rule for you is the margin. What kind of margin are you taking? If you see that you have at least a margin of $700 or $800 per project, go for it. But most people here go in with a margin of $200 or $300, yes, up to the final price, and that's very, very little. Why? Because if you encounter risks, for example, the project takes longer to build, or, well, any risks that might come up. The developer, you miscalculated the price, right? Meaning the secondary market price isn't what you expected, or something else. This small margin of $300 you have just gets eaten up, and in the end, when you resell, you end up selling at a loss. If you enter projects where your projected profit, for example, is over $1,000 or even $1,500, divide that profit by 3. In other words, factor in a threefold risk and you'll still have at least $500 left. That's the amount that will at least help you break even if you made a significant mistake somewhere. But again, I'll repeat, Unfortunately, most people end up entering completely different projects with completely different margins, and with this gap between the price they buy at and the secondary market price, which often doesn't even give them a chance to break even. If you ignore these basic rules, which are actually critically important for investing, you'll constantly end up getting into nonsense, entering the wrong projects, losing money on them, and finding yourself among those who, as it turns out, bought illiquid real estate and so on. And if you want to know even more about how to enter projects correctly, I'll attach a link here. There is a lot of useful, important, and valuable information in my Telegram channel to help ensure that not only are you in profit, but your investments are also safe.